Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Wednesday, March 25th, 2020, and today we're going to be taking a look at the 2020 House election map. So pretty much the House of Representatives elections typically don't favor the Republicans in presidential election years. 2008 was a strong indicator that after a midterm year with a Democratic victory in the presidency, generally the House of Representatives will shift even further to the left. The Democrats picked up seats in 2012 and also in 2016, despite losing in a number of states that they should have lost a number of House races in. Now, they had 6 seats that they gained in 2016. That is by no means an over... I guess you can't say that's really gaining much in terms of an area with 435 seats, but generally Democrats do outperform or do better than the presidential election results in terms of the House in comparison. The general election, generic ballot polling data shows the Democrats ahead, nearing double digits, somewhere around the 6-7 point range. So that's not exactly the worst margin for them. When we're talking about where it was in 2018, it was a little bit larger, but I can guarantee it, a number of these House races are not going to flip from blue to red. Looking at the map right now, this was last updated, I believe, on October 29th of 2019. There are a lot more new updates that we can go ahead and take a look at right now. So this is the Cook Political Report. They generally do a House, Senate, and governor and presidential election prediction right before the elections. In 2008, I believe they were correct about every single Senate race except for Minnesota. That was Al Franken's seat. I believe against Norm Coleman. And then in the House Representatives races, I think they were off by maybe 8 or so. In 2018, they did underestimate some of the Democrats in certain areas, labeling things as likely Republican or even safe Republican, and they ended up going to the Democratic Party. But I don't think they're making the same mistake this time around. If you take a look at some of the areas that are considered likely, they're probably going to go to the GOP. But one thing I don't necessarily agree on is Montana's at-large open seat. They have historical precedents that they don't exactly vote the same way down ballot as they do in the presidential election or even in midterm election years. Montana at large was close, and that was with an incumbent who recently won a special election back in 2017, and now it's open as that representative is now running for governor of Montana. But we just need to take a look at some of these toss-up seats. So there's a lot more Democratic toss-up seats than Republican toss-up seats, mainly because these are state seats that previously went to the Republican Party in previous elections up until 2018. But I do want to make sure that we go ahead and take a look at the fact that there are 3 Republican seats already in the lean and likely column. So it looks like the Democratic Party, if they hold on to every seat, they will gain an automatic 3 seats. And honestly, it doesn't seem too far of a stretch to say that they will probably win every single Democratic toss-up seat, regardless of how the presidential election goes. Even if the Democrats underperform in a number of states, they will still probably carry these House races, number one, because of the factor of the incumbency, and generally, House elections do better for Democrats in presidential election years. I can almost guarantee that they will gain seats at the end of 2020. That's why midterms are the big time for things to overturn, but generally, we see a shift further to the left in a presidential election. That's likely because of heightened turnout amongst Democrats, most likely since they don't necessarily vote in midterms. They are notorious, not necessarily notorious, but the Democratic Party does have a history of not turning out when needed in midterm election years. But 2018 definitely changed the game. So when we look at some of these Republican toss-up seats, we see Georgia's 7th district open, no incumbent, which means that it's going to be a lot more likely for the Democrats to pick it up. And 2 more open seats in Texas. These were already close areas, but when there's no longer an incumbent in the area, most people aren't going to be able to quickly recognize those candidates. They aren't nominees that have been there for 10, 20 years, 30 years in the House of Representatives. They aren't names that they're comfortable with. So if they're Democrats at heart, but vote for the GOP because they know that candidate specifically, and then all of a sudden they're no longer on the ballot, guarantee it's going to go to the Democratic Party. As for the lean Republican area, we have Justin Amash. He's an independent, technically, broke away because of Donald Trump. We're probably not going to see a Republican victory there if Amash is running again, which it looks like he is. So we may not see a Republican opponent at all, or we just may see a split between Amash and the Republican, and then it ends up going to the Democrats. If you take a look at some of these likely Republican seats, honestly, most of these are going to be the same. This Iowa 4th district is interesting because I believe it's Steve King. Does have a very, very bad past that came up in the a lot of his comments too came up in the 2018 elections. The Democrats actually got 3 out of the 4 seats in the Oh, geez. I don't know. It just came up on my screen. But the 2018 elections, Iowa went from 1 Democrat, 3 Republicans to 3 Democrats and 1 Republican, with Iowa's 4th district being the exception, but it was still pretty close. But honestly, I'm going to probably predict that the Democrats do hold on to their House majority. If we're looking at the areas that they have seats in, it's areas that they should have been winning before. It's areas that Hillary Clinton won in, that Republican incumbents just held on to because they were the incumbent. Now, even if Donald Trump does win in some of these districts, which I 100% can guarantee he will win in at least one of these Democratic toss-up districts, they may not vote down ballot because they know the incumbent and they are comfortable with them staying in. It doesn't just apply to Democratic voters. Republican voters generally are around the same. So if we just take a look at where Donald Trump is likely going to be campaigning in as well, that could possibly have an adverse effect towards the Democrats: Iowa, Georgia, New Mexico, for some reason. I think that they also consider Oregon a toss-up seat, but that's not necessarily in here. Oklahoma's 5th district, I actually want to just take a second to shout out to Kendra Horn there, because that was a safe Republican seat. I didn't catch it. I think the only time I ever saw someone discussing it was on Twitter, where they asked, is Oklahoma's 5th district going to be a toss-up seat? Obviously, I voted no. I looked at the voting history of it, and that's not always the most accurate indicator, because a Democrat won it in 2018, despite it being rated as safe and likely by every single political pundit, with the exception of maybe like 1 or 2 that even still considered it a Republican area. But we probably won't see Trump campaigning in Utah or South Carolina. Definitely see him in Pennsylvania. Probably not in New York, other than in just to get a crowd out there. Probably not in New Jersey. Honestly, in these areas, it's probably about 50-50. 50-50 meaning some are swing states, some are not. Donald Trump may end up focusing on the House elections, but this is not the year for the Republicans to flip it back. If Biden or Sanders wins the presidency, that midterm year, definitely, but not 2020. Focusing your money on a House race, which is pretty much long gone, taking a look at the numbers, the Democrats have such a large majority that they can afford to lose half of these toss-up seats and still have a pretty substantial majority of the Republicans. Honestly, it's not going to be the best looking numbers for them, numbers-wise, for the GOP. But if we're taking a look and comparing it to 2018, we're not going to see any type of huge increase for the Democratic Party unless something changes in terms of drastic change in turnout, which actually is possible but not likely, or just taking a look generally at what we are seeing with the American electorate. If they all of a sudden are pushing further to the left in House elections than they are in the presidential election, which could possibly happen, that could have an impact on here. But I can almost guarantee the Democrats will pick up seats, but we're nowhere near looking at a 2018 gain. Even in 2008, the Democratic Party, I think, got roughly around the same or less picked up seats than in 2006, but it was still a victory regardless. But that was with Barack Obama, and the Democratic Party had a stronghold in the South. They even won a race in Idaho, which was interesting. I think it was Idaho's 1st district, and that same representative was endorsed by the NRA in 2010, the only Democratic candidate to be endorsed by the NRA for the House elections in 2010. I just remember that. But I do think that these House elections could see a little bit more investment by some of these mainly Democrats. I think that the Democratic Party thinks 2020 is their year. This is the year of Trump, that if they don't get him out, they're screwed. Technically, that's what their entire campaign is. And I think that might actually bring up turnout for the House of Representatives races too. If people are inspired to vote against Trump, if anyone is labeled as a Trump supporter, obviously they would be voted out too if it's an area that is going to flip from red to blue. For example, Michigan or Pennsylvania or Wisconsin, these were Trump states in 2016, but in 2018, all 3 of them re-elected Democratic senators, on top of some of the states having House pickups for the Democrats and governor elections that retained in the Democratic column or flipped to the Democratic column. And approval ratings for Trump are actually pretty bad, in Wisconsin and Michigan being -10, but surprisingly in Pennsylvania only -1, despite it being rated as leaner likely by a number of pollsters and pundits for the presidential election in favor of the Democrats. But just taking a look at where the Republican Party really needs to pick up seats. California, not going to happen. Probably afford to not lose seats in Texas. Probably not going to happen as well. They need to pick up a bunch of scattered seats around the Northeast, Virginia, a couple in Florida, which is still probably not going to happen. There's a number of competitive races that previously wouldn't be competitive that the Democrats are definitely going to target on. Montana at large with an open seat, or if you take a look at Iowa's 4th district, they may think that this is their time to actually take it compared to last time. It really all depends. The South is definitely something hands-off for the Democrats, though. If you take a look, every single district here is safe except for Georgia and South Carolina's 1st district, and maybe 1 or 2 in North Carolina. But other than that, South is gerrymandered and solid, period. That's it. That's all it's going to be for, actually, now. 2022, the districts are definitely going to change. We don't see Democratic governor in most of these states. So when I say most, I think it's 26 to 24 right now, or 27 to 23. But regardless, it will be right now, the South is just going to be the same way it's always been, just with the exception of Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina, but that's only like 4 districts in total. I don't know if you guys consider Florida part of the South, but if that's true, then probably maybe 6, 7 districts in total out of how many, with the number of electoral votes, they're probably over 100. So other than that, I think that the House election should be pretty interesting. No one's really going to talk about it. Can almost guarantee that. Nobody really cares about it. Nobody talked about it in 2016. Nobody talked about it in 2012. But we could see the Democrats gain. I honestly would bet my money on the fact that the Democrats would gain seats in the House of Representatives, but nowhere near a margin of 2000 that we saw in 2018. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below, and I will see you all tomorrow.